We heard from the president tonight in Mississippi, staunchly red state, staunchly pro-Trump state. They've got an election coming up there next Tuesday. That's ostensibly the reason he's there. But I have to ask you, those clips we played where he addressed the impeachment question there head on, he demeaned the process, went after Democrats, all of the things you've been hearing from him on Twitter, he said in front of that audience. Was his real audience in part there Republican members of Congress? Was this an attempt to remind them that, in his view, the base of the party is with him and essentially to deliver them a message? You don't want that base turning on you, do you?
This has been a very successful argument for President Trump. You look at the impeachment vote that we saw in the House, and there were 0 Republican defections, even among some Republicans who have been critical about Trump's behavior in this matter, have raised questions about it, and who are not running for re-election, chose not to break with the president on this vote. That is a sign of the strength the president continues to command with base Republican voters who continue to see this process as political or describe his behavior as maybe it was the wrong thing to do, but doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. We don't have an argument that he didn't do these things, that he didn't have a conversation with the Ukrainian president, that he didn't raise the issue of investigations as a quid pro quo for meeting or for the release of military aid. Instead, we hear this argument that the president made tonight doesn't rise to impeachment. The Democrats are politically motivated.
And Josh, again, this question of whether Republicans are going to continue to stick with the president through this process, not just in the House, but ultimately in a Senate trial, if it comes to that, the question is, will they stick with him through all of the different revelations that continue to come out? It might be a good moment late at night here at the end of what has been a very busy week, even by the very busy standards that Washington's been held to lately. What were the major pieces of testimony that were presented this week that moved the ball on the question of evidence the Democrats are going to use against the president here?
Well, I mean, one you pointed to earlier, Steve, which was this thing that's just come out today about Lieutenant Colonel Vindman being told by a White House lawyer that he should not discuss the contents of the phone call that the president had. The fact that the phone call was moved onto this NICE system, which is the sort of ultra top secret system at the White House in order to perhaps prevent other people from learning about it. And then there's also some disagreement, I think, between some of the witnesses. Ambassador Sondland had sort of downplayed the significance of some of these interactions, and other witnesses who came in were in direct conflict with him, and then he started to back off from some of his testimony. So that raises the possibility that if we do have open hearings, you might hear differing stories from different witnesses, and at least the possibility of some drama or some revelations. Whether that's going to be enough to cause any Republicans in the House or in the Senate to change their views, I don't know. But it is worth noting that some Republicans in the Senate are signaling that they're already breaking to a degree with the White House line and saying that this was not a perfect phone call, but it still doesn't amount to an impeachable offense.
Yeah, let's take a look at that, what you're mentioning there, Josh. This is in the Washington Post tonight on what may end up being what they're saying is an emerging line of thought among some Republican senators. Growing number of Senate Republicans, they say, are ready to acknowledge that President Trump used U.S. military aid as leverage to force Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his family, as the president repeatedly denies a quid pro quo. In this shift in strategy to defend Trump, these Republicans are insisting that the president's action was not illegal and does not rise to the level of an impeachable offense. The president has frustrated Senate Republicans by seeming to change his messaging strategy every day rather than present a coherent defense of his actions. Franco, it's interesting because I have gotten the sense from some Republicans, the ones who are not offering the full-throated defense of Trump, that they are trying to find a middle ground where they can take issue with the call and some of these actions that have come to light with regard to Ukraine without reaching the point where they say, OK, he should be impeached, he should be removed from office. Reading this article in the Washington Post, though, what strikes me is that if they take that approach, what's being outlined here, it still puts them directly at odds with the president, whose official line is this call was perfect.
It's a very difficult position for the Republicans to be in. I mean, the Republicans and President Trump keep talking about the July 25th call. But as just stated, there have been so many people come forward, so much testimony, but that the charges go back way before the July 25th call. You have Ambassador Taylor, you have Vindman talking about concerns about this shadow foreign policy starting well before them this year. Fiona Hill talking about last year, concerns that Giuliani, the president's private attorney, kind of leading this charge to put more pressure on the Ukraine to do this investigation of Joe Biden and his son. Republicans can no longer, at least it's making it much, much harder for them to just talk about this phone call. And it's also becoming, as you point out, harder to not say that the president put this pressure on the Ukraine government. So they need to find a different way to say it. And now they're putting out that it's not an impeachable offense.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.